Hello, I'm so happy I got a hold of you. Welcome back to another exciting episode of LT Showcase. I am Lucious T, and today we have 3 games for the price of 1, because we are taking a look at Stoics' epic RPG series called the Banner Saga. And this is the Banner Saga Trilogy for the Switch. All 3 games. Now, I played the first game years ago, and for this review, I've just recently played games 2 and 3. But as the thing is all just one big game, we're going to talk about all of them. So yeah, let's see what I thought.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. I'm Lucious T. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life. This is Retroactive.
The Banner Saga, funnily enough, was the first and only game I ever beat for iOS. Now, back in 2014, 2015, I had an iPad I used for work, and as this game at the time was only available on, I believe, iOS, maybe PC, that's where I picked it up, and I played it for that. Now, that's important to note because Banner Saga 2, Banner Saga 3, they are all designed with that basic mobile game interface, so they don't control the best on the Switch. And I would imagine they don't control the best on other consoles, so if that's something that's going to bother you, definitely go for the PC versions, because there are times where I was trying to make moves, or I was trying to see which enemy had health, what did this, and I made mistakes. And that's something common. I'm not going to fault the game too much for that, but it's a little clunky, especially, well, not especially, it's just a little clunky in the combat sections. During the Choose Your Own Adventure sections, it's fine. You can't really mess that up. But like I said, there's 3 games. The first one came out in 2014. I think the second one was 2016, and the third one was 2018. But they're all essentially the same game. Each game takes off right where the last one left off. You can continue your save file. So that was a bit of a bummer that I wasn't able to start with my old save file, although it does ask you at the beginning of starting Banner Saga 2, essentially a choice at the end of the first game that even when you make it, you're not aware of what's going to happen, and then that is how you pick your main hero. So for me, spoilers, my main hero is Rook, and at the end of the first game, I had Alette, his daughter, cast the deciding arrow into Bellower, which ends up killing her. Now that was a huge issue for me back then because I didn't use that character throughout the whole game. So I had a very underleveled unit going up against the end boss who has to get the killing blow. So that was a little bit of a difficult scenario. And one of the cool things about this game is that you can lose almost every battle and the game continues to go on. It's essentially, there's 2 parts of the game, and this is for all 3 of them. They're all like this. You have a choose your own adventure, sort of Oregon Trail chat option, almost like choose your own adventure. You pick multiple options, you go through dialogue trees, you make choices for your caravan, because your caravan is always, essentially in this world, the sun has stopped moving, and this giant serpent has broken out of the Earth's crust and is destroying things. And then later, this darkness starts descending on the world, and so everyone, the humans in this world, there's another race of people like humanoids called the Jarl, and they're almost like giant oxen people. They have big horns. And then later on you meet people that look like centaurs called the Horseborn, and you're being attacked by these underground dwellers called the Dredge. And the Dredge have a huge history of fighting with the Jarl, and then when the humans came about, they fought. And throughout the game, you find out a little bit more about that, but we'll get to that. So like I said, you have multiple answers. How you answer the questions determines what's going to happen with your caravan, how many clansmen you pick up, how many fighters you pick up, how many supplies you need, how many days you can survive. Because this game always feels like you're hanging on by a thread. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about the first one. It was probably one of my, obviously my favorite game I ever played on iOS, but when I got the indie boxes, the Banner Saga indie box was one of the ones I will always keep because I really thoroughly enjoyed the game. Now in 2014, I want to say I probably played this a year after that, probably 2015-ish. This was when Game of Thrones was at its heyday before it sucked. So there's a lot of Game of Thrones influence in this because truly anyone can die at any minute. There is a lot of random deaths. There's a lot of inconsequential decisions you'll make where you'll have a dialogue option and then suddenly it's like, oh, your best troop just fell over a cliff and is dead. And it's that fast. It's literally that fast. So you have to be very careful if one of your top performers is in a dialogue option. And sometimes you don't even have a choice. It just happens and you just get screwed. That's what's so great is at the end of the first game, when you have that innocuous choice of who fires the arrow, I didn't know that was going to lead to someone being dead. There's even more impactful choices in the first game that even impact if your main character gets killed in the third game, which I ended up not making the right choice, or at least when I picked my character, they didn't make the right choice because I didn't get to play the first game for these. I played 2 and 3 sequentially, so that save carried over, but in that game file, I didn't make a certain choice in the first one, and so I lost my main character at the very end of the third game, which for this game, I didn't mind. I was bummed, but it kind of, the guy was bummed he lost his whole family. So in the end, they have a nice heartwarming thing where they all come together. So I didn't feel too bad about it. So that's the choose your own adventure stuff. You can get various dialogue options. You always end up doing the same thing as with a lot of these games where, like, especially in the second game, there's a part where you're going into these caverns, and I tried not to, but even when I picked all the dialogue options to not, you still end up going in it. And you're always with 2 different caravans, and they usually coalesce at one point. In the first game, you start off as the Jarl caravan, and then the humans, and then eventually you meet up at the end, have the big standoff with the big bad, and then in the second game, you start off together, and you have this cool part where the Eowyn, the Mender, these Menders are like mages in this world, makes a stone bridge out of fallen cliff faces, and essentially you walk across a chasm of cliff faces falling down and falling up. Like, the game got more cinematic and more in-depth as the sequels continued on, and especially in the third game, they even had little cutscenes, whereas before, when you would switch from your caravans, the 2 caravans you were following, it would just show a face on a map. And then the other caravan, so in the second game, once you finish that, then Bolverk, the guy I don't even remember from the first game, he splits off to go carry some crate for the Menders, to some water, and then the other people continue on to going to Aberrang being the human capital. And in the third game, you're still with the people in Aberrang, and then you have the others that go through the darkness, which by this point of darkness has overcome the world, and they have to find a way to stop it. And there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of mystery box where people who know what's going on don't share it with you and your characters. But by the end, it all makes sense. It's all satisfying. Like, especially now, just before I started recording this, I truly saw like, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I hate the trope of, oh, the mystery person's like, oh, if I told you the truth, you couldn't handle it, or, oh my God. And then when you find out the truth, it's like, okay, yeah, that's huge. But me as the player would like to know that sooner. I get the characters can't handle it, but me as the player can, because that's why I'm playing it. It's not like watching a movie or reading a book. Even then, I'm annoyed by it. Anyways, I digress. So there's that part, the story part. Then there's the combat. And the combat is a tactical-based game, but it's one of the funnest tactical-based games and also one of the most broken ones, too, because essentially your strength and your health are tied to the same meter. And then you have an armor meter that protects that. So when you go and you attack enemies, you can do a strength attack where it measures your strength against theirs, and you do either no damage, 1 damage, or more, depending on if you have more strength than them and more strength than their armor. Or you can always do an armor attack that hits for the same value. So you can have a 3 armor attack, 4 armor attack, so on and so forth. What you end up having to do is you have to go and hit their armor to then hit their strength. But you have something called willpower, and willpower allows you to add extra damage to your attack. So you can, if you have the ability to use 3 willpower on an attack, you can turn a 1 damage attack to a 4 damage attack. And that tends to be a much more reliable strategy, is to put all your troops in the same cluster and then have them focus fire people. Because the sooner you damage them, the less damage they can inflict on their turn. And there's no way, there's almost no way to heal in this game. No reliable way to heal. You can't, and then if your armor's gone, you can't really get that back either. So it's just a war of attrition. It's how fast can you get to them before they get to you. And there's not guaranteed turn orders, there's guaranteed team orders. So the way it works is it will guarantee a turn for whoever team is up until it's down to 1 person for that one team. And then at that point, it's called Pillage Mode. And once you're in Pillage Mode, you just go in the order you have. So if it's 2 against 6, those 2 people will get a turn every other turn. And then the other people have to wait 6. But once it's down 1 to 6, then the 1 person gets a turn, and then the other 6 all get their turn sequentially. So sometimes you can take advantage of that if you've had bad luck in a match. I did that once in, I think, the second or the third game, where I had a stone singer who had the ability to make enemies who were at a certain health explode, and I just ran away with him while I used the other one to play distraction, because I had this character who would die, but when she died, she could actually come back to life on the battlefield. The only one who's like that. It's a big point in the story. I won't bring it up. But yeah, I managed to get through the battle, which was cool. But it really is, it's a fun combat system, but it's also annoying when you have to do strategies like that. But yeah, fun combat, but literally when it gets down to it is you just want to go and you have to inflict more damage before it can be inflicted on you, because if you have a guy on the other side who has 22 health, he's going to hit you massively on your people with 10 health. So it makes more sense to look in the turn order too to see if, oh, he's going 5th, so we can stack all our enemies or all our guys around him and then just wail on him. And then what's funny is that some of the troops take 4 squares, so like the Var will take 4. So you can box out the other enemies by using their own guys to keep them from getting to you. So that's where a lot of the strategy comes from. It's fun. It definitely is a little too Game of Thrones influenced at times. It's very, very bleak. But man, the second game, things it adds over the first game really weren't much. It added the Horseborn, and then it added barriers on the field. There's not much in the way of different types of classes, but everyone has a little bit of unique stuff. There's one guy who can use a bear on the field. There's people who use spears. You have a few mage-type characters. But really, once you're out of willpower, you're kind of screwed. And that's what really the third game made so much more difficult, is they introduced wave battles. So in the first 2 games, you would just had your battles and you were done. And if you lose a troop on the field, they don't die permanently. Ironically, they get injured. And then they're injured for a certain amount of days. And the way you get them back to full strength is you don't use them for a few fights, or you rest your caravan. But when you rest your caravan, they use supplies. And supplies like food, if you run out of food, the thing starves in the game. It's a nightmare. And the way you get supplies is you have people forage. Sometimes you can get them in the options, or you can purchase them at markets with your renown. Catch 22 there, though, is the renown also is how you level up your troops. And when you level them, you get 2 experience points to add to whatever you want. You can add up their health, you can add up their armor, their willpower, their dodge, their ability to break armor. The third game, because at this point all the characters are pretty much maxed out in those regards, introduces the ability to upgrade the... Essentially, you can get different perks for your thing. You can make it where when you get attacked, you have a chance to resist armor damage. And then you can even add a legendary title. And when you add a legendary title, it gives you even more abilities. One, allowing you to bleed people from getting hit. Another one, giving you just more strength. And that's what makes it even more painful when you give someone a title and then they get themselves killed. Like I did with Volka in the third game, which sucked because she was one of my best troops. And that's what happens. You have to constantly adapt and adjust in this game. If you think you're going to go through with the same group, it's not going to happen. Someone will get injured, you got to go into the next fight, and you need to bring someone else. So they do a good job of that. They do a good job of you playing with different setups, different teams. In reality, even when you level it up, they don't seem like they get that much better. Although at the very last battle in Game 3, I leveled up Ivor all the way, and he was just a tank. And that's the only way I managed to beat the last mission, which, when I found out after the fact, you don't even have to beat the last mission, and you can still get one of the 5 endings. And, yeah, I really enjoyed the game. As far as the tactical RPG goes, it is simple enough to not be overcomplicating, but it's so simple that it can be maddening when you try and do something consistent. So the game's always making you adjust your strategy, which in the long run is a good thing. Solid game. If I had to recommend, definitely start with the first one. If you like the first one, that's probably the strongest one in my opinion. Then you can get on to the other 2. The third one is probably the weakest because there's no real travel in that one. In the first 2 games, you're traveling through locales, you're traveling through the Godstones, learning about the world. In the third one, you're mainly stuck in town, and then the other caravan is going through the desolate wasteland. Although at this point, you're kind of finding out, oh, the dredge weren't so bad, and oh, this is what happened. They're just their own people. Everyone's running away from the serpent. You find out why it came out. Like, everything's answered. So I'll give it that. It's answered. It's satisfactory. It's still a bittersweet ending. But as far as the game series goes, highly recommend it. Switch is the way I probably would recommend it, but like I said, it's a little hard to control sometimes, so if that's going to be a problem, pick it up on PC. If I was going to give a rating to the whole series, I give it a 9. Maybe an 8.5, somewhere around there. Anyways, guys, that's your review. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.
Go away! 6 in the morning. I don't want to see you.
6 in the morning?
Go away!
Is it really 6?
Yeah, 6 in the morning.
Oh.
It's too bright.
I didn't know you were British in the morning.
It isn't the morning, it's the early morning. Please.
Oh, well, that explains the lack of makeup.
That's my natural beauty.
All right.
No!
Such grace.
It's night owl shirt. Cuckoo. Okay, this is enough. This is really unexpected and I don't like it.